The alien ship hovered silently in the atmosphere, its sleek, metallic surface reflecting the dim light of Earth's early dawn. From within the control room, the alien commander gazed at the blue and green orb below, his expression one of disdain. They had observed this planet for cycles, intrigued by the resources it offered, yet completely dismissive of the species that inhabited it. Primitive, fragile, unevolved. These humans had developed some rudimentary technology, yes, but it was laughable compared to what the invaders wielded. Their weapons were centuries behind, and their understanding of the universe was confined to their small sphere. The commander's hand waved over the holographic interface, displaying the human cities below, bustling but insignificant. He scoffed. "We have nothing to fear from these beings," he declared, his voice smooth but edged with arrogance. His second-in-command nodded in agreement. The plan was simple: descend, extract what they needed, and leave. There would be no need for large-scale conflict. The humans would either submit or perish without much effort from their side. They had done this on other worlds, each time encountering species more advanced than humans but still no match for their technology. Earth would be no different. The invasion, if one could even call it that, would be swift and efficient. Their mission was clear: extract the rare mineral that lay deep beneath the human soil. It powered their advanced weaponry and technology, and Earth was rich with it. The humans would hardly know they were there. And if they did, what could they possibly do? The commander smirked at the thought. As far as he was concerned, Earth was theirs for the taking. They had been monitoring human communications, observing how the species bickered amongst themselves. Weak, disorganized. The idea that humans could pose a threat was laughable. The landing was seamless, the craft descending undetected into a remote area far from major cities. The technology they possessed allowed them to cloak their movements, and they moved with practiced precision. Their goal was a mining site deep in a forested region, isolated, where human presence would be minimal. The commander gave the order to deploy a small team to secure the area. In the distance, among the dense trees, a group of humans carried on with their daily tasks, unaware of the impending encounter. They were workers, rugged and seemingly ordinary, employed at a mining facility, though far removed from the technology and sophistication of the world's advanced cities. The aliens observed from a distance, scanning the humans, expecting little in the way of resistance. With their superior technology, the humans would likely not even understand what was happening before they were subdued. The aliens moved swiftly, approaching the site with silent determination. The humans, 4 of them, noticed a strange disturbance in the air but initially dismissed it as nothing more than a trick of the wind. However, something about the stillness unsettled them. One of the men, his eyes sharp with years of working in harsh environments, sensed that something was wrong. There was an unfamiliar hum, an unsettling vibration in the air. He turned to his companions, muttering something under his breath. Before they could react, the aliens were upon them. What should have been a simple capture mission quickly turned chaotic. The first alien raised its weapon, expecting the humans to cower, but instead the sharp-eyed worker grabbed a nearby tool, instinctively using it to block the energy beam. The weapon misfired, missing its target. The other humans, reacting with a surprising speed that the aliens had not anticipated, scattered, taking cover behind mining equipment. The commander, watching from a distance, frowned. This was not according to plan. These humans should have been incapacitated by now. One of the aliens moved to engage, but was quickly taken by surprise when a human threw a heavy wrench, knocking the alien to the ground. It was a primitive attack, but it was effective enough to disrupt their strategy. The aliens, despite their superior equipment, found themselves momentarily disoriented. One of the workers, a woman with a background in engineering, quickly assessed the situation. She was no soldier, but years of working with dangerous machinery had honed her instincts. Seeing the aliens fumble, she realized they were not invincible. She shouted instructions to her companions, urging them to exploit the aliens' confusion. In the chaos, one of the humans managed to trigger an explosion by tampering with some nearby fuel reserves. The blast sent a shockwave through the area, knocking several of the aliens off their feet. The commander, observing from the safety of the ship, could hardly believe what he was seeing. These humans, whom they had dismissed as weak and inferior, were fighting back with an unexpected fierceness. How could such a primitive species have the audacity to resist them? And more importantly, how were they managing to hold their own, even if just for a moment? The aliens regrouped, their arrogance momentarily shaken. They had anticipated an easy victory, but these humans had proven to be more resourceful than expected. Still, the commander reassured himself this was merely a fluke, a small setback. The humans had only delayed the inevitable. Back on the ground, the humans, still outmatched in terms of technology, had managed to buy themselves time. But they knew this was far from over. They were facing an enemy far more advanced than anything they had encountered before. Yet in that moment, something shifted in the humans. They realized that while they might not have the advanced weapons or technology of their adversaries, they had something else: resilience. And the aliens, for all their superior intellect, had not accounted for that. The alien ship floated effortlessly in the sky, its dark metallic hull glimmering faintly in the pale morning light. Inside, the alien commander stood tall, his gaze fixed on the image of Earth displayed on the control panel before him. To him, it was nothing more than a backwater planet inhabited by a primitive species. The humans, with their crude technology and limited knowledge of the galaxy, posed no threat. The aliens had studied them for decades, monitoring their communications, their wars, their achievements and failures. Their conclusion was always the same: humans were inferior, not even worth the effort of true conquest. The resources buried deep within Earth's soil, however, were a different story. Those were valuable, worth the expedition. The mission was simple: extract the minerals and leave without incident. If the humans tried to interfere, they'd be easily neutralized. The commander gave the order to descend. Their advanced cloaking technology ensured that their approach went unnoticed, and soon they were hovering over a secluded area far from major human settlements. This location had been carefully selected to avoid unnecessary attention, a remote mining site deep in the wilderness. The humans there would be few and easily subdued. They would have no idea what hit them. As the ship touched down, the commander activated a holographic projection, mapping out the terrain and the human workers in the area. They were just finishing their shifts, seemingly unaware of the approaching danger. The commander smirked. These humans had no idea how outclassed they were. The aliens had done this many times before on worlds far more advanced than Earth, and it had always ended the same way. The humans here would be no different. He dispatched a small team to secure the area and gather what they needed. The aliens moved silently through the trees, their sleek bodies blending seamlessly with the shadows. They observed the humans from a distance, gathering intelligence. These particular humans seemed unremarkable manual laborers by the look of them. They were not soldiers or scientists, just people going about their daily tasks. The alien scanners picked up no signs of advanced weaponry, and the humans appeared oblivious to the invaders' presence. This would be easy. As the aliens approached, one of the workers, a man with weathered hands and sharp eyes, noticed something unusual. There was a subtle change in the air, a low hum that didn't belong. He paused, glancing around suspiciously. His companions continued their tasks, but he felt something was off. Before he could fully process what was happening, the aliens made their move. The first alien stepped out of the shadows, raising its weapon. It expected the humans to freeze, to cower in fear. Instead, the sharp-eyed worker reacted instantly, grabbing a nearby tool and using it to deflect the energy beam aimed at him. The shot missed its mark, striking a nearby piece of equipment and sending sparks flying. The other humans, startled but quick-thinking, ducked for cover behind the machinery. The aliens were momentarily taken aback. This was not the reaction they had anticipated. The commander, watching from the ship, frowned. This was supposed to be a routine mission, a quick extraction. These humans should have been subdued by now. He barked orders into his communicator, directing his team to take control. But on the ground, the situation was rapidly spiraling out of control. One of the aliens moved to engage, but was caught off guard when the sharp-eyed worker hurled a heavy wrench, striking the alien squarely in the face. The alien stumbled, disoriented, and the humans seized the opportunity to scatter and regroup. A woman in the group, her mind racing, quickly assessed the situation. She wasn't a fighter, but years of working with dangerous machinery had taught her how to stay calm under pressure. She shouted to her companions, directing them to use the mining equipment for cover and to keep moving. The aliens, despite their superior technology, were struggling to adapt to the unexpected resistance. The workers had no advanced weapons, no training in combat, but they had something else: experience in surviving tough, unpredictable situations. They knew this land, they knew the tools at their disposal, and most of all, they knew how to improvise. As the aliens advanced, the humans began using their surroundings to their advantage. They triggered small explosions, set up makeshift barriers, and used their knowledge of the terrain to stay one step ahead. The commander could hardly believe what he was seeing. These humans, whom they had dismissed as weak and easily controlled, were putting up a fight. How could a species so backward have the audacity to resist? He watched as his troops struggled to regain control of the situation. The humans were not fleeing in panic as expected. Instead, they were fighting back with a surprising level of coordination and determination. The aliens pressed forward, confident that their technology would eventually overpower the humans, but each attempt to subdue them was met with clever tactics and unexpected defiance. The woman led her group in setting a trap, using mining explosives to block the aliens' path. When the trap was triggered, a massive explosion rocked the area, sending shockwaves through the alien ranks. Several of them were knocked off their feet, disoriented and vulnerable. From the safety of his command center, the alien leader gritted his teeth in frustration. This was not how the mission was supposed to go. These humans were supposed to be weak, easily dominated. Yet here they were, resisting, fighting back with a level of resilience that was both infuriating and perplexing. He would not allow his mission to fail. The humans had surprised them once, but it would not happen again. Back on the ground, the humans knew they had only bought themselves a small window of time. The aliens were regrouping, and their superior technology would eventually give them the upper hand. But for now, they had managed to hold their own. They had proven that they would not go down without a fight. And in that moment, a spark of defiance flickered within them. The aliens may have been more advanced, but the humans had something far more powerful: the will to survive, and the determination to fight for their home. As the dust settled and the aliens prepared for another assault, the humans braced themselves. They had been underestimated, but they knew one thing for certain: they would not be underestimated again. The humans regrouped quickly after the initial encounter, gathering in a makeshift shelter they had hastily set up in the dense forest. They were exhausted, bruised, and shaken, but not defeated. Despite their lack of advanced technology, they had managed to hold their ground against an enemy far beyond their understanding. As they huddled together, catching their breath, a silent determination began to build among them. "We can't just wait for them to come at us again," one of them, a tall man with a military background, said firmly. His voice carried a quiet authority. He wasn't in command, but in moments like these, leadership didn't need to be formal. "They'll come back, and next time they won't make the same mistakes." The woman from earlier, the one who had led the defense, nodded. She was an engineer by trade, not a soldier, but her quick thinking had saved them once already. "We need to use what we have. They might be more advanced, but that doesn't mean they're invincible." Her voice was steady, though the weight of the situation hung heavy in the air. The group began to formulate a plan. They knew the terrain better than their alien adversaries. They knew the caves, the ravines, the choke points where they could force the aliens into a bottleneck. It was a long shot, but they had no choice. They couldn't outrun the invaders, and surrender wasn't an option. Their only hope was to fight smart. Hours passed as they prepared. They rigged crude explosives from mining equipment, set up traps using tools they had scavenged, and familiarized themselves with every inch of the forest. They worked with a single-minded focus: knowing that each second could be their last if they didn't act fast enough. Meanwhile, the aliens, having suffered unexpected resistance, were regrouping as well. Their pride had been wounded, and their commander was growing increasingly agitated. How could these humans, this inferior species, have managed to hold them off, even for a moment? It was an insult to their superiority, a challenge to their dominion. They had conquered far more advanced civilizations without so much as breaking a sweat. Yet here they were, struggling against what should have been an easy target. The commander, pacing in his control room, barked orders to his subordinates. "We underestimated them once, but it won't happen again. Prepare the assault drones. We will crush them before they can mount any further resistance." His voice was filled with cold fury. He would not let this failure stand. As the aliens advanced through the forest, they expected to find scattered and frightened humans, easily swept aside by their superior firepower. But what they found instead was a carefully laid trap. The humans had used the natural landscape to their advantage, setting up ambushes in the narrowest parts of the forest where the aliens' numbers meant little. When the first group of aliens crossed a narrow ravine, a hidden explosive detonated, collapsing the rocks above and cutting off their path. The aliens scrambled, disoriented, as the humans launched their next attack. The battle was chaotic. The humans were outnumbered and outgunned, but they fought with a ferocity and ingenuity that the aliens hadn't anticipated. They used the terrain, the trees, and even the thick mist that had settled in the forest to their advantage, striking quickly and then vanishing before the aliens could react. The aliens, so used to relying on their technology to dominate their enemies, found themselves at a loss. Their drones, while powerful, struggled in the dense foliage, and their sensors were unable to penetrate the natural barriers that the humans had so skillfully utilized. In one particularly tense moment, the humans managed to disable one of the aliens' transport vehicles by luring it into a trap they had rigged with mining explosives. The explosion was deafening, sending shock waves through the forest and leaving the alien troops scrambling to regroup. The humans watched from the shadows, their breaths held as they saw the invaders struggling to make sense of the chaos around them. The tall man, crouched beside the engineer, whispered, "They don't know what hit them. We've got them on the back foot." For now, the engineer replied, her eyes scanning the trees, always wary of the next move. "But it won't last. They'll adapt, just like we have. We need to stay ahead of them." Despite their success, the humans knew that this was only a temporary reprieve. The aliens were technologically superior, and eventually they would find a way to counter the humans' tactics. But for now, they had bought themselves time, and with every small victory, their confidence grew. As night fell, the forest seemed to close in around them, the darkness amplifying the tension in the air. The humans knew the aliens were still out there, regrouping, planning their next move. But they also knew that they had something the aliens didn't: resilience. The humans had spent centuries surviving in harsh conditions, adapting to whatever challenges the world threw at them. This was just another challenge, another enemy to outlast. The group huddled together, sharing what little food and water they had left. The tall man glanced around at his companions, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "We've done well so far," he said, his voice low but firm. "But this isn't over. They'll come at us harder next time." "They will," the engineer agreed, her voice tired but steady. "But we'll be ready. We've held our own so far, and we can do it again." In the silence that followed, the weight of their situation settled over them like a heavy blanket. They had managed to push the aliens back, but they were under no illusions about the difficulty of the fight ahead. They were outmatched, outnumbered, and outgunned. But they weren't out of options. Not yet. As the humans prepared for what they knew would be a brutal fight, the aliens, too, were preparing. Their pride had been wounded, but their resolve was unshaken. The humans had surprised them, yes, but the aliens would not be caught off guard again. They would bring the full force of their technology down upon these defiant creatures, and this time they would make sure there was no escape. But what the aliens still didn't understand, what they had failed to grasp from the very beginning, was that humans didn't know how to give up. They didn't know how to back down, no matter the odds. And in that stubbornness, that relentless refusal to surrender, lay the key to their survival. The forest was still, cloaked in darkness, with only the faint rustle of leaves and distant hum of alien machinery breaking the silence. The humans, having barely survived the previous skirmishes, knew that this would be their final stand. They had made it further than anyone could have predicted, but the reality was settling in. They were running out of resources, energy, and time. Huddled together, they took a moment to gather their strength. Their faces were smeared with dirt, their clothes torn, but their eyes remained sharp with resolve. "They'll come soon," the tall man said, his voice low but clear in the tense quiet. "This time they won't hold back. We need to be ready." The engineer nodded, her hands busy with the last of their makeshift explosives. "This will have to be enough," she muttered, mostly to herself. "We can't stop them, but we can slow them down, make it cost them." The plan was simple, and that's what made it effective. They had studied the aliens' movements over the past few encounters and identified a pattern. The aliens, despite their advanced technology, operated with a certain arrogance, believing that their superior weapons and drones would easily overpower anything the humans threw at them. But that arrogance had also made them predictable. The humans knew the aliens would come through the narrow ravine just as they had before. It was their fastest route to the human position, and the aliens had no reason to think the humans would be prepared for a full-scale assault. But they were. And this time they were betting everything on one last, desperate move. The alien commander, on the other hand, was determined to end this farce. These humans had embarrassed him and his crew for far too long. What should have been a quick extraction mission had turned into a prolonged conflict, something that could not be tolerated. His troops had regrouped, and now they marched with an unyielding determination. The humans, as crafty as they had proven to be, were no match for the full might of the alien arsenal. He had authorized the use of heavy weaponry, something they had initially avoided to keep the mission clean and efficient. But no more. As the aliens advanced, their heavy footsteps echoing through the ravine, the humans watched from their vantage point, hidden behind a ridge of rocks. The engineer's fingers hovered over the trigger for the explosives. She didn't need to say anything. The others were ready. Each of them knew what was at stake. Each of them knew that this might be the last thing they ever did. But if it worked, it would buy enough time for someone to escape, to warn others, to keep fighting. The aliens entered the ravine, their glowing visors cutting through the darkness. Drones hovered above, scanning the area for any sign of human activity. It was quiet, too quiet. The commander paused, feeling a twinge of unease, but quickly dismissed it. These were humans, after all. They couldn't possibly. The explosion ripped through the ravine, a deafening roar that sent rocks and debris flying in every direction. The carefully placed charges had collapsed the walls of the ravine, trapping the alien forces in a bottleneck. The drones, confused and damaged by the shockwave, spiraled out of control, crashing into the walls. Alien soldiers were thrown to the ground, their advanced armor doing little to protect them from the sheer force of the blast. Now the tall man shouted, leading the charge. The humans descended from their hidden positions, attacking with everything they had. They didn't have the sophisticated weapons of the aliens, but they had determination. They had makeshift explosives, old rifles, and the element of surprise. The battle was brutal. The aliens, though disoriented, fought back with lethal precision. Energy weapons fired, lighting up the darkness with flashes of blue and red. But the humans pressed on, refusing to give the invaders a moment to recover. The engineer set off more explosives, causing further chaos among the alien ranks. The tall man led a small group into hand-to-hand combat, using whatever tools they could find as weapons. It was a desperate fight, but desperation was something humans were intimately familiar with. The alien commander, watching from a safer distance, felt a surge of rage. How could this be happening? These humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and outclassed in every possible way. Yet they fought with a relentless ferocity that defied logic. He barked orders into his communicator, demanding that reinforcements be sent immediately. But it was too late. The ravine was now a death trap, and his forces were being systematically dismantled by a species that shouldn't have even posed a threat. In the midst of the chaos, the engineer noticed something a flaw in the alien drone's programming. Their sensors, overwhelmed by the debris and smoke, were malfunctioning, firing erratically at shadows. She quickly relayed the information to the others. With this knowledge, the humans began to focus their attacks on disabling the drones, knowing that without air support, the aliens would lose their technological edge. One by one, the drones fell, and with them, the tide of the battle began to turn. The aliens, now without their primary advantage, were forced into close combat, something they were not prepared for. The humans fought with everything they had, their bodies and minds pushed to the limit. They knew this was it, the final push. The commander, realizing his forces were on the verge of collapse, made a last-ditch effort to regain control. He ordered his remaining troops to fall back, to regroup and launch a counterattack. But the humans didn't give them the chance. They pressed forward, using every bit of energy, every ounce of willpower, to drive the aliens back. And then, in the thick of the fight, the tall man managed to corner the commander. The alien leader, once so confident in his superiority, now stood face to face with the human who had led the resistance. There was no dramatic speech, no pause for reflection. The tall man, exhausted and battered, simply looked into the commander's eyes, saw the flicker of fear, and struck. The battle ended not with a grand victory, but with silence. The remaining aliens, leaderless and broken, retreated into the darkness, leaving behind the wreckage of what should have been an easy conquest. The humans, too, were broken. They had lost many in the fight, and those who remained were too exhausted to celebrate. But they had won. Against all odds, they had driven the invaders away. As the survivors gathered around the smoldering remains of the battlefield, the engineer sat down, staring out at the destruction. They had done the impossible, not because they were stronger, or smarter, or better equipped, but because they refused to give up. In the end, that's what made them human. And that's what the aliens had never understood.